Dying Light wasn't exactly on the top of my radar, but once January came around and I noticed all the sexy releases don't really start until February and beyond, I figured, what the hell. And sure, a what the hell attitude isn't the best way to decide to drop $60 on a plastic disc, but such is the price of being a video game enthusiast. The game opens with our main character getting briefed and then parachuting into the city we'll be playing in. Immediately upon landing, he's confronted by some, what we'll call unsavory looking fellows. After carefully deducing that our main character is actually not a supply crate, unsavory fellow number 2 says what might be the dumbest thing in the entire game.
Break his legs, then take him to rides.
Okay, so for reference, someone with 2 freshly broken legs sounds something like this. It's the kind of thing that might get a zombie's attention.
Loud noises draw them.
Not to mention that they would then have to carry this guy, along with any supplies they might have found, through the zombie-infested and uneven urban terrain of the slums. This is going to sound obvious, but when characters don't act like people with thoughts and reasoning, it breaks the illusion that they are people. There are several moments like this in the game where characters do and say things that just don't make sense. But overall, it's not a bad intro to the game. We see the world we'll be in, we get a feel for the 2 factions, and we understand the dangers for our main character having just been bitten and attacked. From there, we complete some simple tutorial-like tasks in the tower before we are unleashed into the big open world. It's at this point that the game starts to impress. First off, the world is large and plenty of fun to run around in. There's a big emphasis on parkour, and the idea of using parkour as a means to avoid the undead is a good one. It makes a lot of sense that speed and agility would be your best bet for avoiding the shambling hordes. Despite being entirely in first person, the parkour controls are better than I would expect. There were a few clunky moments, and more than one dramatic escape was spoiled by my character frantically jumping up and down against the nearest wall, trying to find the one grabbable polygon, but overall I found the parkour to be very enjoyable. Getting some momentum going and blazing through the city can be a lot of fun. Next to parkour, the game's other main mechanic is melee combat, which is also extremely well done. Hits feel amazing and heavy when they connect, and the way zombies and humans react to being hit feels way too good. Melee weapons have 2 types, blunt and slashing, both with 1- and 2-handed variants, and they work the way you would expect. Blunt weapons knock enemies around, break bones, and knock enemies down, while slashing weapons take off limbs and cause open wounds. There's an impressive amount of detail in the visual representation of damage as well. Slamming a hammer down into a zombie's shoulder can take a chunk of meat out of the shoulder. Enemies recoil from strikes realistically, they get stunned, they lose limbs, they break bones, break their legs and they crawl, take off their arms and they can't grab. The combat is just visceral, violent, gory, and remained fun all the way through the game. Even now when I go back to the game, it's mostly because I just love wailing on the undead in it. Going along with the melee combat is the melee weapon crafting system. It's pretty simple, but that's how I like it. The main benefit of crafting your own weapons is giving them extra damage and effects, such as elemental effects. A neat bit of detail is how environmental things like rain can boost electrical effects while hindering burning. There is also craftable items that can have a similar effect, i.e. flammable liquids boost burn damage. There are tons of other useful items to craft too, but instead of a long boring list, how about we check out some exploding shurikens? Yeah, that's right, I said exploding shurikens. Holy shit, that's cool. However, at the start, you're not quite the killing machine I just portrayed you to be. You start off with weapons that seem to do more damage to themselves than to the zombies, and feel like they're held together with spit and wet band-aids. A few good swings with a weapon will leave your character gasping for air, barely able to attack, and you have no impressive skills to speak of. It's at this early point in the game that using parkour to avoid large groups of zombies is often a good idea. This leads to this natural feeling of progression where as you, the player, start to feel more confident in confronting the packs of undead, so too increases your character's martial prowess. Of course, as you move along in the story, new and stronger types of zombies pop up, making sure that even though you do feel stronger as you progress, you are also still vulnerable if caught off guard or in a bad situation. Even now that I am in post-game, there are some zombies I think twice about before messing with, but that is mostly because the big burly zombies are a bit too damage spongy for my liking. Sure, not every zombie can be an easy kill, but some of these beefy bastards can take over a dozen rifle headshots before needing a nap. Speaking of the stronger zombies, let's talk about nighttime. The game has a day and night cycle, and the message that night is coming is definitely something that grabs your attention if you're just out playing around in the day. Nighttime is no joke. It's pitch black, so you only see what your flashlight is hitting. Regular zombies are stronger and faster, but the biggest threat are the volatile zombies. These guys are fast and mean. Once they spot you, all the volatiles in range will start chasing you down until you can get out of sight for a good amount of time, or you reach a safe house. The good news is that while out at night you earn double experience and don't suffer a survival point penalty from dying, like you do in the day. This makes night a fun time to play around in the open world. Sure, you'll likely get ripped apart from time to time, but it's way more exciting and feels rewarding if you do well. The atmosphere is nicely done. The music fits perfectly, and there are lots of little ambient noises and the like to give the world some audio detail. Some sound effects are noticeably overused, but overall it works well. But the things that actually lessen the overall experience for me are story related. First off, the main villain, Rise, and his henchmen are a bit of a letdown, because they're just mindlessly evil. See, one of the compelling factors of zombie stories is the human drama. What are people willing to do when faced with overwhelming despair and fear? What kind of people stay noble to the end? What kind of people sacrifice their humanity in exchange for a better chance at survival? Rise was set up well to be in that position. He stockpiling medicine and equipment, but it could have just been so he could protect himself and his own people. He even could have had good intentions with the file he had stole. This would have raised some interesting moral dilemmas about which side to help, and would have made playing both sides even more interesting. But instead he's just cartoonishly evil. He was before the zombies and he is after. The point of zombies is that they challenge the characters and make them do and decide things that they normally never would, but the whole zombie situation hasn't affected his character, so he could have been in any other game or situation and still been the same. It just feels like a missed opportunity given the setting. An enemy that isn't logical is tough to make engaging. Breaking someone's legs before taking them somewhere on foot is dumb. If you cut off a captive's hand, they can only be forced to give half as many handjobs. Stockpiling all the medicine and not only keeping it from others but also refusing to sell it, which would be the realistic evil thing to do, just makes no sense. Basically, he lacks consistency. On one hand, he's collecting protection money from the other survivors, so he acts like the sleazy, trying to make a profit off people in their time of need kind of guy. But then on the other hand, he refuses to sell medication, which could easily get him far more money, and he often gets all preachy about chaos and making decisions for yourself. So then he's acting like the just wants to see the world burn kind of guy. He seems like different characters based on what the game wants to have happen, and I just didn't find him interesting. Although his rambling insanity did give our main character a lot of chances to tell him to shut the fuck up, which I enjoyed immensely. While the other characters are mostly done well, we really don't see enough of them. Several characters have these moments that are supposed to be the big emotional points in the story, but I never really got attached enough to the characters for it to be effective. Add that to it being very obvious when the game was going to make the shit hit the fan, and it really pulls the punches of what they seem to be going for. The scenes are well done and entertaining to watch, but I never felt that ah shit moment where you're genuinely concerned for a character's well-being. Characters talk a lot about what they want or need to do and how they feel, but almost nothing about who they are, and it's hard to care about strangers in a zombie game. The upside to this is that the game keeps a brisk and entertaining pace that's good for the gameplay, but even something as simple as extra radio chatter here and there, or maybe even discoverable journal recordings throughout the game, could have done a lot for the characters without hurting the flow. I did like the presentation though. We get quite a few cool scenes, and I like that we never break away from the main character's first-person perspective. The game keeps a good pace and never takes control from you for too long. If you're looking for some solid, fun gameplay, good atmosphere, and a big open world to play in, it's a pretty good time. Whatever complaints I might have, I can't deny that I was having fun throughout the game and plan to play some more even after finishing it. It's decently challenging at times too, depending on how reckless you like to be. After my first playthrough, I had a little over 70 deaths. Sure, a good number of those were goofy falls, but plenty of them were just me getting suddenly overwhelmed or unexpectedly exploded. But the biggest praise I have to give is that they just absolutely nailed what I imagined going against zombies should feel like. Single zombies are laughable, but get grabbed in a mob and you can go down fast. The combat, the animations, and behavior are just great, and still surprise me sometimes. If you like zombie games, I absolutely recommend it. Even if you don't, it might be worth checking out when you get a chance. Personally, I'm pretty indifferent to zombies, but I still had a good time. Bum ba dum ba da ba dum bump. Bum ba dum ba da ba dum bum bump. Bum ba dum ba da ba dum bump. Bum ba dum ba da ba dum bum 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 ba dum ba dum ba dum ba da ba dum.